Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today as we talk about Compass's best practice techniques for building your annual budget. Today's presenter is going to be Roxanne Nykirk. You're all in the right place. This session is designed for all Compass users, so hang tight. On your GoToMeeting control panel, you're going to see a handout section. That is where you can download today's checklist that Roxanne will be mentioning, as well as some slides to go along with today's presentation. You'll also see a questions box down at the bottom. Feel free to pop in any questions there. Okay, I'm going to pass it over to Roxanne so we can get started.
Thanks, Jenny. We host this webinar every year to show and/or remind you about some tools that are within your Compass system that will assist you in making your budgeting process smoother and more efficient every year. I will show you some shortcuts that will save time and create efficiencies in your planning process, as well as help you avoid common pitfalls that happen around this time of year. Your budget team should have a person from every department. This will help everyone understand the goals for your institution and stimulate discussion to get their insight into how these goals can be attained. If you have been consistently reviewing and revising your projections on at least a quarterly basis, then you should already have a reasonable starting point to begin next year's budget in your Compass software. I'm going to go to the Reporting section, Reporting and Reports, or this icon right here. You can then easily export reports to Excel directly from Compass for distribution to those who are going to be taking part in the budgeting process. We recommend creating a budget script so we have a group of reports set up to look at next year's numbers all in one place. This is done by double-clicking on Create Script and then giving it a name. Then right-click on the reports that you wish to copy or charts. There's a Copy for Script option. Then you can go back to your folder and right-click and paste into Script. Once the reports are there, we can right-click to get to the properties and change the date range to next year. You may notice that we have the budget option set to No. This is because we want to see what we are working on in our projections. If we said yes here, then our report would show what we locked last year. One other helpful hint is when you're saving the reports, try not to put a date in the report name. Otherwise, eventually, those could get stale, even though they have current information in them. Once your script is built, a simple double click will open up all of the reports in the script viewer. From the script viewer, they can all be printed out, printed to Adobe and emailed as a package, or even exported to an Excel workbook. All right, I'm going to go to our projections now. We always need two pieces of information to build a budget in the balance sheet: a volume and a rate. Remember, all budgeting is done on the Projections tab of any account, not the Budget tab. The Budget tab stores the static numbers that we locked last year. The Projections tab has our current actual values as well as our current projection. The reason we want you to regularly forecast in Compass is to have updated projections so you can always see the current direction of your institution, which in turn eases the budgeting process that only officially occurs once a year. Just as a review, your Projections tab has your actual numbers for your current year, your history going back up to 5 years, and everything in the white area are your projections that are entered by you or forecasted based on your models going forward. This is your dynamic screen that always shows where you're heading. The Budget tab is what we locked last year. Once a budget is officially finalized and approved, we lock the budget so it becomes static. This enables us to get variance reports both based on actual numbers as well as our forecasted numbers and reforecasted numbers going forward. Each account and folder also has its own variance tab. So as you're working on forecasting and reforecasting throughout the year, you can see how your changes to your forecast line up with what you originally planned for budget. You can also take a look at the Fed Funds tab as you're forecasting. This will show you whether any of the accounts that you've changed are going to change your funding position on the fly. Then we have our Notes tab. Here is where you can enter your notes regarding where you received your assumptions from and what you did at any point in time. You can also insert the date automatically if you wish, or you can just type it in. If you have multiple users using the model, you can also enter your initials so you know who did what changes in the model. Then you can actually see these in the Plan Notes report in the Assumptions section of your reports. Volumes can be entered in a few different ways. If you have not been actively forecasting, you can start at a total folder level to enter a broad brush projection as a starting point. This can be done by going to any folder and clicking on the Change button. Then we would go and adjust our larger items to narrow in on actual account behavior. You always want to model your balances starting out and moving in on your chart, since folder modeling will overwrite any projections you currently have in your plan. There are a couple of different ways to model your balance projections. In this account, we have what we call a quick model. The quick model provides an annual growth rate. It starts with your last updated month and is a rolling annual forecast year over year for the entire span of your projections. If I go to another type of account, here our button says Modeled. This means we have a new model for our growth. This model enables you to put different growth percentages in different times of the year, or you can show different growth percentages in different years if you anticipate a change, either up or down, in your forecast from a balance standpoint. Sometimes we may not be able to assign a specific growth rate to an account. There are also many ways to quickly edit your data manually to get the numbers that you need. In this money market account, we want to show that we will have an ending balance of $30 million in December of next year. Currently, this account is being modeled. To perform a manual edit, we need to click on the Modeling button and change it to Manual. We know that this year's ending balance is still where we are planning on ending this year, so we can ramp from that number. I'm going to highlight the cells starting with December. Then I will right-click and select Quick Edit. Ramp to a value and enter my ending point. This account is now ramping from the $22,932,000 projected balance to the $30 million we wanted by the end of next year. Keep in mind, when you are using manual edits, the system does not reforecast, and these accounts will need more review to ensure the projections are staying reasonable. You can double-click on any column in Compass to see your results in chart form. In this account, you can see that in January of the following year, our balance sharply decreases. It would be a good idea to forecast out further to make sure our results continue to look reasonable moving forward. Also, don't forget about the end of the current year. Your current forecast drives your capital calculations. So you want to make sure that your capital ends this year at a reasonable rate, as that it will be your starting point next year. A few years ago, we added the ability to forecast the allowance for loan loss account in tandem with the loan loss provision account on the non-interest income statement. Please see if this model will work for you if you are not currently using it, and if you have any questions regarding how to use that model, please don't hesitate to give us a call. Non-interest income and expense can also be forecasted and modeled, but there are some different options in this area. By clicking on our Modeling button, which says Quick, we can see our service charge checking and savings account is currently modeled at an annual growth of 3%. That means the system is looking at the last actual year's balance and growing this year 3% over that. Then evenly distributes the amount needed to reach that target and does the same for each subsequent year. Just like the balance sheet, we can double-click on any column and get a graph of our projections. We can see that our current projection, represented by this green line, looks nothing like our history, represented by the blue line here. We're going to go back and select a previously created new model for 3% growth. Anytime you create a new model, which here is the new month from previous month, you will need to name it and save it. Then that model is available to be applied to other accounts. Now we are still getting a 3% growth, but the model is looking at the same month of the prior year. January here is now growing 3% over January of this year, and so on. Now when we graph this projection, we can see that this is much closer than our original projection. We are beginning to capture the historical movement of this account, and we can tweak it from here. With an income or expense account that directly ties to a balance sheet item, you may be able to use a fee model to forecast that account. This institution has a number of loan fee accounts, and this model enables you to tie an income or expense account directly to a balance sheet account. This is our fee model. We can see here that it is tied to the consumer loan account, and we are taking 8% of new balances of that consumer loan account. So now whenever we forecast our consumer loan account on the balance sheet, this account will automatically reforecast. If you're getting numbers in a spreadsheet format from your department managers, you can also directly copy and paste into the Compass accounts. One account that we do want to remember to review is our cash account. This account cannot be modeled, so you will want to regularly review and revise it as part of your budgeting and forecasting process to make sure you're in line with where you anticipate your cash position to be. Now that we have covered our volumes, we need to discuss our rates. The rate forecast screen is what contains our market rate projections. So we should have a forecast either with the rate forecast file provided monthly by PlanSmith or by entering our own forecast manually. When you go into the rate forecast screen, you are actually in the rateworks.mdb file that you see in your data folder. The purpose of that file is to store all of the driver rates that you see here. Any plan files in your data folder will use the same RateWorks file. If you want to have a number of plans for different budget scenarios, we do recommend setting up different folders that contain a plan and rateworks.mdb. That way, if you want to model different rate environments, you will not impact your live data. There are 3 rate environments already available here: Plan, High, and Low. If you are entering your own forecast, remember to forecast in the High and Low section if you want to use those compute options. You are also given the ability to create your own drivers for in-house base rates. If you have our branch system, it is recommended that you create all of your pricing models in this screen by using driver rate models to centralize your assumptions for ease of updating. Also remember, in the Financial Compass model, all floating accounts that have floors need to have driver models established on the rate forecast screen and applied to the account. All of your existing earning assets and paying liabilities should already have pricing models. They will just need to be reviewed and revised if necessary. If we look at our commercial fixed account, we can see that we have a quick model applied to our offering rate. A quick model means this account has a direct relationship to a driver rate. In this case, it is tied to prime with a spread of 75 basis points. If we look at our consumer loan account, you'll notice our button says Modeled. A modeled rate enables us to show that our pricing will change differently than market change. This is particularly important when we are working with our deposit pricing and our non-maturing deposits. As these accounts tend to be highly administered rates, they typically require a little more detail. One setting that we get a lot of questions on is the lag option in the model. What this does is dictate what time frame we want to pull our rate from. If we have a 3-month lag here, it will use the Fed funds rate from 3 months ago. A lot of our clients want to use the lag to show the fact that they lag in changing the rate when the market changes. This is really better established by building a model that shows your beta. In this account, we are saying that for every 100 basis point change in Fed funds, we are going to increase our pricing by 25 basis points. As rates are still anticipated to continue rising into next year, this model will be very useful for our continued reforecasting. Please keep in mind, this is what you believe is going to happen as of now. This could change as the market changes. So this may need to be reviewed and revised based on what does or does not happen in your institution. We can verify all of our models by going to Reporting and looking at the Pricing Assumptions report. So here's our commercial fixed quick model, and here's our consumer loan model. These models are very important when looking at your forecast going forward to reasonably project the interest income and expenses. Again, we want to be able to talk to those who know our markets and products to develop the pricing strategy based on the forecasted rate environment. If we have not already done so, we may want to confirm that we have our prepayment potential modeled as well. I'm going to start by looking at the Prepayment Assumptions report. I can see from this report that many of my loan accounts do not currently have a prepayment assumption. We would want to set these up on any applicable accounts as they affect future cash flows. There are 2 options available for modeling prepayment behavior. Since prepayments are affecting maturity data, we set this model up on the Maturity tab. You can also get to this area by going to Projections, Prepayment Utility. A 1% quick model means that 1% of this portfolio is expected to prepay every month. At the beginning of 2013, we added the ability to set up Financial Compass to track prepayment behavior based on your loan download. In this account, you can see we have a historical prepayment of 1.28% on average, which means our 1% seems reasonable at this point in time. For longer-term fixed-rate instruments, you also have the ability to create a model to replicate a change in prepayment amounts depending on the rate environment. We compare the current portfolio rate to the offering rate to determine where the account falls. Because our current portfolio is 5.91 and the current market rate is 6%, if we look at our prepayment model, this tells us that we are expected to experience less than 1% prepayment this month based on the 0 and -1 point of our model. Prepayment information for mortgage backs and CMO investments should be received on a regular basis from your broker and entered into the model. The last piece of potential optionality that we will want to review are any callable instruments that we may have. In our municipal account, you'll see that we have a callable tab, and we do have one instrument that actually is callable. This tab can either be populated by the download or would need to be entered manually. The system will then compare the projected offering rate to the coupon rate to determine if an item is eligible for a call. If it does look like an item may call, it will show up in the Scheduled Prepayments column on the Maturity tab. You will notice the button here says No Model. If you have callable instruments, you do not want to set up any type of prepayment assumption in those accounts. Review the account settings every year or so. These settings control how the projections for each account behave. I know that this account is set for a portfolio of 5-year amortizing loans. This is affecting the new balances projected to come on based on our growth model. I can see we have $232,000 projected to come on at a rate of 6% in October. If I go to the Maturity tab, I can also see new maturities in November of $3,000 at 6%. This is the first expected payment for the loans projected to come on in October. The easiest way to review the settings on your accounts is to go to the Reporting section and the Chart of Accounts report. Don't forget the tax settings. They are adjusted by going to Projections, Tax Information from the toolbar drop-down. This is also where we can enter any tax credits or loss carry-forward that we may have. Keep in mind, since this is a non-interest expense item, any dollar amounts entered should be rounded to the nearest dollar. Another account that you don't want to forget about, if applicable, is dividends. They are forecasted by going to Utilities, Options, Dividends. This account is showing a quarterly payout for next year. Since these items are a balance sheet item, they are entered rounded to the nearest thousand. Also remember, you are always working on a temporary copy of your plan unless you save. It is always a good idea to save as you go along throughout your entire forecasting process. When all of our assumptions are entered, we need to make sure we compute, even if we have only made a change to one account. This is also where we can select to look at our results under the high or low compute. This is a quick way to see results under different scenarios without even having to make a copy of the plan. After the compute is finished, we are ready to look at our outputs. Compass has many charts and graphs available to express your numbers in pictorial view, including chart abilities in the reports themselves. So on Reports, right now I have the balance sheet. I can double-click over any column, and I will get a pie chart that shows the mix for that particular folder portfolio. If I want to see my growth flow, I can also double-click next to the account name and get a bar chart. Another nice thing about this script that we created that we talked about earlier is that once it's created, you can use it every year without needing to reset any of the properties. This process of forecasting, reforecasting, and reviewing reports will happen over and over until your numbers are where you want them to be for next year's budget or your multi-year strategic plan. Finally, our budget has been approved by the board and is ready to be locked. You will be receiving an email from us tomorrow with instructions on how to lock the budget. Those instructions also encourage you to call us. Please do. You only go through this process once a year. Just to review, what we have in the system right now is a set of locked budget numbers from last year on the Budget tab, and a set of current forecast on the Projections tab that we just got approved to be our official budget. To lock the budget, the first thing we will do is run a compute, because we want to make sure that there are no changes on the compute summary. This will show that our budget numbers were computed and balanced when they were approved. Then we will go to Utilities, Lock Budget. We're going to change the month and the year. Yes, we want to replace the existing budget numbers. We're going to click OK to compute for budget taxes. And then after this compute is complete, we will recommend that you review your budget numbers. Make sure that they are what you believe you locked in. Then exit out of Compass, save changes, and you'll create a locked budget folder in your archive where you'll copy your databases. This way you have a backup as of the point in time in which you locked the budget, just in case you need to go back and make any changes. Let's review what we just did. By going to the Commercial Fixed Rate Loan account and going to the Variance tab, we can see the numbers for next year and going forward are the same because we just locked. We can also see that the numbers on the Budget tab match the numbers on the Projections tab. And we no longer have the locked numbers from last year that we just saw a few minutes ago. This way, we can continue to download our actual numbers and reforecast while getting variances to our locked budget numbers. Again, because we are able to continually reforecast, by next fall you should have a good head start on the next budget season. Don't forget, we have a client checklist that shows you how often we recommend you review specific assumptions. Because we do recommend that all assumptions are reviewed and revised on a regular basis. If you would like a plan review, or if you have any comments or questions, please notate them on the survey that will pop up when you exit the meeting, and I will call you to discuss them. Please remember that we are always here to assist you in getting your information into Compass. You can call and talk to anyone in support or email support@plansmith.com. Thank you again for taking time out of your busy schedules to join us today.